I love RMC, you love RMC, pretty much everyone loves RMC. Their coasters are among the world's best, delivering strong ejector airtime, great inversions, and some of the smoothest experiences out there. So what's the reason for the title of this video? How dare I attack this holy company? Well, RMC's problems have nothing to do with the experiences of their coasters. I've heard people criticize them for being repetitive and mediocre, but that's a subjective opinion not worth arguing about. It also has nothing to do with them running out of rides to make, something I've also heard. RMC's on an absolute tear as of now and shows no signs of slowing down. Except that may not be true going forward. RMC, to be quite honest, has some problems. A lot of them. In case you're somehow unfamiliar with Rocky Mountain construction, here's a bit of background information. They built their first coaster in 2011 with New Texas Giant, revolutionized the industry with their modern airtime-packed designs, and have built a lot of the world's best coasters, simultaneously influencing other manufacturers to update their designs to a more RMC-style type of ride. But what are the problems I was talking about? Well, from a rider's perspective, there's a glaring one: restraints. RMC's trains, seats, and restraints are some of the worst out there, at least in my opinion. I've heard some people defend them, but the general consensus is that they kinda suck compared to the trains of other elite manufacturers. RMC seats are hard, cramped, and equipped with an uncomfortable lap bar that comes down during the ride. The lap bar itself also has a shin guard, so during all that airtime, your thighs aren't the only things being bruised, your shins are as well. Personally, when I experience ejector airtime, I'd like to be flying up into a comfortable restraint, not a hard plastic bar. Now, I know there's differences between RMC's first and second gen trains with swing axles and whatnot, but they're pretty much the same from a rider's perspective. Speaking of the rider's perspective, it's not the only one that exists. Tons of things happen with roller coasters regarding maintenance, construction, part replacement, and more that visitors have little to no idea about. And it's in this area where certain manufacturers like B&M and Mach shine, whereas others like Intamin and RMC struggle. See, ride quality isn't all about the coaster itself and the guest's enjoyment of it, that also means many other things. How easy is it to maintain, do parts need to be replaced often, how often is it actually operating, and how willing is the manufacturer to work with the park regarding any problems. These are all factors that are very important to parks, and like I said, this is where RMC kinda drops the ball. They've had many issues in this regard throughout their history that lots of people simply don't know about, so here they are. Something that's important to keep in mind before we begin is that all of these so-called problems in no way, shape, or form make these rides unsafe. You're perfectly okay going on an RMC or any other roller coaster for that matter, they are completely safe. It's actually more likely for you to get struck by lightning twice in the same year than it is to be injured on a roller coaster, just to get that out of the way. Let's start with the most obvious one of RMC's problems, the entirety of Lightning Rod. To sum its whole story up, Lightning Rod opened as the world's first launched wooden coaster, featuring incredible pacing and relentless airtime. There was only one problem: the ride was hardly open. Now, I'm not going to go over all the technical issues with Lightning Rod because 1, that would take several hours, and 2, I'm not a ride mechanic, I'm just a guy on YouTube who pretends he knows more than he actually does. What I do know, though, is that there's a big problem with the launch system and the resulting effect it had on the track. Dollywood and RMC took a while to truly fix this problem, and ended up drastically decreasing the launch speed as well as putting iBox track on over half the ride. Most people say that this had a negative effect on the coaster, and despite the adjustments, it's still pretty unreliable. I already had that written before it was announced that Lightning Rod would be replacing its launch with a chain lift. While this will make the ride more reliable, it completely negates the whole quirk of the coaster, and I'm sure will make for an even more negative effect on Lightning Rod. Now, one of RMC's quirks, and probably their main one, is that they take old wooden coasters and retrofit them with steel track on top of the existing structure, creating a new, exciting layout. The problem with this idea is that the existing wooden structure was designed to handle the forces of the original coaster, not the RMC conversion. These problems are amplified by the fact that the forces RMC conversions exert on the structure are often much greater than those of the original wooden coaster. Because of this, in most cases RMC will have to reinforce the existing structure in order to make it suitable for the new ride. The amount of reinforcing necessary can often be unpredictable, leading to further structural work after the coaster has already opened to the public. This maintenance usually leads to downtime. Steel Vengeance is one of the biggest offenders of this. Despite being hailed as one of the world's best coasters, Steve has a plethora of problems that you'd have to watch a 53-minute long video to know all about. Like I mentioned, the structure's a big problem, as well as the trains that were too heavy, the braking system, block zones, etc. This culminated in a train collision on the brake run during opening day, and several structural and braking issues that still exist today. Twisted Timbers opened the same year with the same trains, and faced many similar problems with the support structure and footers. But those footers had problems because of bracing and other physics-related issues. Wildcat's Revenge, a ride that opened this year, had a footer problem because of something not so physics-related. Groundhogs have actually been terrorizing the ride's footers and support structure, which led to an extended closure a few months back. That's definitely one of the funniest reasons a coaster has been closed. Another coaster that opened this year is Airy Force 1 at Fun Spot Atlanta. The issues with this coaster can't be attributed to a hand-me-down support structure, bulky trains, or groundhogs. With this ride, it's just bad engineering. The finale of Airy Force 1 contains 5 extremely strong moments of ejector airtime, much stronger than is usually felt on a ride. This is completely safe for the human body, don't worry, but a lot of people have said that this airtime is painful and unpleasant to experience. I haven't been on Airy Force 1, so I can't speak to how this feels, but you'd think with all the tools that are available regarding roller coaster design, RMC would at least be able to keep their airtime comfortable to humans. Right after these hills is an extremely short brake run. It slams riders to a stop while they're out of their seats from the airtime, which lots of people who've ridden it say is also very uncomfortable. It's a shame because Airy Force 1 looks like a fantastic coaster, it just has a few deficiencies in its design that hinder the ride's operation and likely hurt the experience for riders. Going back to structural concerns, there's also a problem with many of RMC's Raptors as well. Railblazer closed a while ago due to that, Wonder Woman Golden Lasso coaster is currently closed for refurbishment due to a bunch of problems, and wheels have been a major issue for the Raptors with a new train design, resulting in lots of closures and inspections. There's been many other issues with RMC coasters over the course of their history, but I think I've made my point. The real question is, why does this happen? Well, something important to keep in mind is that roller coaster manufacturers will often subcontract other companies with certain parts of the ride. This can be seen with launches, brakes, and sometimes trains and track work. As a result, the manufacturer will have to pay these subcontractors for the work done, increasing the price of the coaster itself. In order to keep costs down, RMC handles most parts of the ride they build themselves. While this is good financially, it'll often result in those ride parts RMC chose to do themselves having issues. Again, I want to stress that RMCs are completely safe. These issues I'm talking about only lead to checks and repair, and because of that, more downtime. So if RMCs are unreliable and hard to maintain, why do parks elect to install them? Well, like I mentioned earlier, they're pretty cheap compared to other major coasters. It's much more financially viable for a park to convert an old wooden coaster into an all-new hybrid than it is to install a brand new ride that could cost $10 million more. Another reason is that RMCs are really damn good. I've heard a lot of enthusiasts that claim to argue from a park's perspective focus on the marketability and GP appeal of a new installation, completely ignoring the actual quality of the ride itself. While those things play an important part in determining whether or not people come to the park for the new ride, something even more important is word of mouth. Picture this. You're a member of the general public, and you see an ad for, let's just say, Iron Gwazi, with it saying how it's the tallest, fastest, and steepest hybrid coaster in North America. Sure, that sounds cool, but it wouldn't necessarily make you want to buy a ticket to Busch Gardens just to ride it. Now, same scenario, what if, instead of the ad, one of your closest friends kept going on and on about how good the Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens is? Marketability is one thing, but I personally would be much more likely to make a decision based on the opinion of someone I trust than a random ad on TV. RMC, according to most people, enthusiasts, and the general public, makes really good coasters, and there's no getting around that. As long as they continue to deliver a top-tier product, I have no concerns at all for their place in the amusement industry going forward. With how successful RMC's been, now it seems that every enthusiast has formed a very strong opinion regarding them. Some worship the company, some call them overrated, but I fall somewhere in the middle. Personally, RMC is not my favorite manufacturer, but I can absolutely acknowledge the massive role they've played and continue to play in the development of the coaster industry. While I have my problems with them, ultimately I can say that every RMC I've ridden has delivered a fantastic experience. But again, my perspective isn't the only one. The fact of the matter is, no matter how good RMC's coasters are, the technical aspects that aren't apparent to park guests is what they struggle in. Because of this, some parks and chains like Cedar Fair have even stopped working with them, and if other manufacturers start to deliver an elite ride experience, like some already have, while keeping costs and maintenance park friendly, we could see that growing number of RMC installations begin to slowly dwindle. but they've got quite a bit before this would have too big of an effect on the company as a whole, and as a result, a lot of time to fix the problems of RMC going forward.